variable is, suppose like the sales of the ice cream would not decrease by the temperature of the liquid. Okay? And if you want to know the check the height of a person, you have to have the weight. Right? So that is what is weight and height should be made in calculating that. So this is a correlation analysis. Another application is your outlier detection. So where you have some result set in the data which is used to have the outliers. Okay, with the result only you can measure the outliers. That is what is outlier detection, where you will have some result set data sets in analyzing the plots. So these are some of the applications in your scatter plots. You have made it also the mainly this for correlation analysis and outlier detection. Then we see how to construct this scatter plot. First you have to have a independent and a dependent variable. Okay? As we know, your horizontal axis and your vertical axis have a numerical data set and a numerical value. So you have to have an independent and a dependent variable. Whether what type of data set you are going to represent your plot will determine this. You are independent and dependent. So based on that, you have to identify the variable type. First step is you have to identify the variable type, whether it is an independent or a dependent variable. Next is plot the independent variable on a x-axis. Especially if you are going for a independent variable, you have to express in a x-axis. And you are going to have a dependent. Suppose, guess an example on that. What would be an independent variable here when I am going to represent the x-axis? What would be? Any guess? What would be your independent variable which you are going to represent in the x-axis? Suppose I am going to take the, right? So that is what is here independent. And I am going to have a dependent variable on y-axis. So what would be a dependent name? Okay, one person name would be a dependent for all 5 subjects. Okay, so that is what is here. Plot of the dependent variable on a simple things I am going to discuss here. Suppose you are going to have a huge lumps of data that could vary, right? So here I am extracting a relationship between the dependent variables. So you are extracting between the marks of the same person of 5 different subjects. Okay, so you are having a plot based on that. Here you have an example here. You have a match place, the goals score. You have a different data set. Understand the process through an example, the following data set. You have there are so many matches played here, the data that is being given in the top, and you have some goals which is being stored in the bottom line. So some numerical data is being given. So based on this, you can have a dependent and independent variable going in a particular manner. Okay, so this is how you can plot your scatter plot. In the coming ways, you can have this, how these data sets and 2 variables will be taken into account in plotting the plot. data, cluster,